You check your 401k balance on a random Tuesday night. $47,000. You do the math in your head. Again, the way you always do. Retirement age minus your age divided by how much you're saving, times a growth rate you're not even sure is right. The number never feels like enough. It never feels like it's moving. You put money in every 2 weeks, and the balance creeps up so slowly you start to wonder if it's even working. Here's the strange part. Somewhere out there, someone your exact same age, making your exact same salary, checks their account and feels completely different. Not because they're smarter, not because they make more money, because they crossed a line you haven't crossed yet. Financial researchers have a name for it. They call it a psychological and mathematical turning point. The moment your money starts working harder than you do, and it tends to show up right around $200,000. Below that number, saving for retirement feels like pushing a boulder up a hill. Above it, something shifts. The boulder starts rolling on its own. And here's what I eventually figured out. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't have a suit, an office, or a fancy title. For most of my 20s and 30s, I was the person staring at a small 401k balance, wondering if I was already too far behind to fix it. I made the mistakes. I cashed out an old 401k when I switched jobs because I needed the money. I ignored my employer match for 2 years because I didn't understand what free money even meant. What changed things wasn't a secret trick. It was understanding one number, $200,000, and why it changes everything that comes after it. So let's talk about it. Not with a lecture, with a story. Meet Dave and Karen, both 38 years old, both living in mid-sized American cities, both earning around $65,000 a year. Both have access to a 401 with a company match. Dave has been contributing just enough to get the match, about 4%, since he was 26. He's never increased it. Life got expensive. Kids, a mortgage, a used car that turned out to be a lemon. Karen started at the same 4% at 26. But 3 years ago, at 35, she crossed $200,000 in her retirement accounts, and something in her relationship with money quietly changed. Same income, same starting point, very different roads ahead. We're going to follow both of them and use them to understand why one number, $200,000, is the boulder at the top of the hill. Picture a boulder sitting at the base of a hill. You're behind it, pushing. Every dollar you contribute in your 20s and early 30s is you physically pushing that boulder forward. It barely moves. You push again. It inches forward. This is what saving feels like for almost everyone in the first 10 to 15 years. This is Dave's face right now. And it's Karen's face too, back when she was 26. In this stage, your own contributions are doing almost all the work. Growth is small in dollar terms because the balance is small. $200 of growth on a $10,000 account doesn't feel like anything. This is the stage where most people quit. Not because they're lazy, because the effort to reward ratio feels broken. You're working hard, and the number barely moves. But here's the part almost nobody explains clearly. This stage is supposed to feel like this. It's not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're still at the bottom of the hill. The Federal Reserve's own data on household finances has repeatedly shown that a large share of Americans have little to nothing saved for retirement by their 30s and 40s. Not because they didn't try, but because they gave up during exactly this phase, right before things were about to change. But here's the part almost nobody explains clearly. This stage is supposed to feel like this. It's not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're still at the bottom of the hill. Think about how discouraging that is. You do the responsible thing. You set up the 401k. You pick a fund. You watch the deductions come out of every paycheck. And for years, the account balance looks almost identical to what you put in, plus or minus whatever the market did that month. Dave felt this exact discouragement at 29. He remembers looking at his statement and thinking, I've been doing this for 3 years, and it barely looks different than if I just kept the cash in a drawer. That feeling is what caused him to stop increasing his contributions. And for years, the account balance looks almost identical to what you put in, plus or minus whatever the market did that month. Dave felt this exact discouragement at 29. Not laziness, disappointment. He assumed the system wasn't really working for someone like him. What he didn't know is that this flat, frustrating stretch is universal. It isn't a signal that something is broken. It's the boulder at its heaviest point, right at the base of the hill, before gravity has anything to work with. Here's the part that trips people up. In the beginning, your contributions are the whole story. If you put in $6,000 this year, your account might grow by $6,400. It looks like you're basically getting nothing extra for taking on investment risk at all. That's mathematically true, and it's also temporary. The problem is nobody tells you it's temporary. So people compare their $6,400 result to the wild stories they hear about someone's account doubling and assume either the stories are lies or they're doing something wrong. Neither is true. They're just further up the hill, somewhere between $50,000 and $150,000. Something subtle starts happening. The boulder is still heavy. You're still pushing, but the hill is starting to curve downward, just slightly. This is the phase where growth starts contributing almost as much as your contributions do. If you have $100,000 growing at a historical stock market average of around 7% a year, that's roughly $7,000 of growth without you lifting a thing. That's more than many people manage to save from scratch in an entire year. Karen hit this stage around age 31. She didn't notice a dramatic shift. She just noticed her account grew even during a few months where money was tight and she couldn't contribute much. That was new. That was the hill starting to help her. Dave, at 38, is only just now approaching this range, and he's about to feel the same shift Karen felt 7 years earlier. The difference is timing, not intelligence. This is the moment the boulder crests the hill and starts rolling on its own. At $200,000, assuming that same 7% average annual return, your account can grow by roughly $14,000 in a single year before you add a single new dollar. For a lot of American households, that's more than an entire year's worth of retirement contributions from their paycheck. This is the point where compound growth stops being a concept in a textbook and starts being the dominant force in your financial life. Your money is no longer a small helper alongside your effort. It becomes the main engine. You become the assistant. Vanguard and Fidelity have both published long-term account data showing the same pattern. The growth in dollar terms accelerates dramatically once balances cross into the low to mid six figures, even when contribution rates stay exactly the same. You become the assistant. This is why Karen's account, 3 years after crossing $200,000, doesn't feel fragile anymore. A rough month at work, a smaller bonus, a slower savings year. None of it threatens her trajectory the way it once would have. The boulder is rolling. Even if she stops pushing for a while, it keeps moving. Dave hasn't felt that yet. Every year still feels like it depends entirely on him. Let's walk through the actual math, side by side. Karen starts contributing meaningfully at 26. Age 26. $8,000 saved, contributing $500 a month. Age 35, crosses $200,000. Age 45, account grows to roughly $460,000. Age 65, account reaches approximately $1.40 million. Let that sink in. Karen didn't dramatically increase her contributions. She just started early enough to reach $200,000, while she still had 30 years left for the boulder to roll. Now, Dave starts contributing meaningfully at 38. Age 38, $47,000 saved, contributing $500 a month. Age 48, account grows to roughly $155,000. Age 58, account reaches approximately $340,000. Age 65, account reaches approximately $460,000. Read that again. Same monthly contribution, same rate of return, nearly $1 million difference by retirement age. The difference isn't effort. Dave worked just as hard. The difference is how many years his money had to compound after crossing that $200,000 threshold. Think about that for a moment. It's not about being rich enough to save more. It's about giving your boulder enough hill left to roll down. Here's what nobody talks about. Most financial advice focuses entirely on your savings rate. Save 15%, save 20%, cut your coffee budget. And saving matters. But almost no one talks honestly about the fact that timing your crossing of key thresholds, like $200,000, matters more than almost anything else you can control after age 40. The uncomfortable truth is this: the single biggest predictor of your retirement outcome isn't how disciplined you are in your 50s. It's whether you crossed $200,000 while you still had 15, 20, or 25 years left for it to compound. That means two equally hardworking, equally disciplined people can end up worlds apart in retirement. Not because one was smarter, but because one started the climb 5 or 10 years earlier. This isn't meant to make you feel behind. It's meant to explain why you might already feel behind, even though you're doing everything right. The system rewards time more than it rewards effort, and nobody tells you that early enough for it to feel fair. And here's the second part of the uncomfortable truth. The financial industry mostly avoids talking about this because start earlier isn't a sellable product. There's no fund you can buy, no fee-based service, no app subscription that gives you back the years you didn't invest. The only real lever is time, and time isn't something anyone can sell you after the fact. So instead, the conversation gets redirected toward things that are sellable: the best fund, the right allocation, the newest strategy. Those things matter a little, but none of them move the needle the way simply crossing $200,000 5 years sooner does. That's not a popular thing to say on a platform that profits from you believing the next product will fix everything. But it's the truth, and it's the truth that actually changes how people behave once they hear. Sure, but how do you actually survive this phase, the pushing the boulder uphill phase, without burning out or giving up? I think the honest answer is this: you stop measuring your progress by the balance and start measuring it by the behavior. First, track your savings rate, not your account total. A percentage of income is something you fully control. A dollar amount bounces around with the market and can wreck your motivation on a bad week. Second, automate every increase you can. When you get a raise, increase your 401k contribution by 1% before the extra money ever hits your checking account. You'll barely notice it's gone, and it removes willpower from the equation entirely. Third, remind yourself that boredom is the strategy working. If retirement saving feels exciting and dramatic, something has probably gone wrong. The years where nothing seems to be happening are the years the boulder is quietly picking up speed. People who reach $200,000 aren't the ones who found some secret investment. Research from groups like the Employee Benefit Research Institute consistently shows they're usually the ones who simply kept contributing through the boring, invisible years without stopping. Fourth, give yourself a milestone marker halfway to the goal. Waiting for $200,000 to feel meaningful can take a decade or more, and that's too long for most people's motivation to survive without a checkpoint. Pick $50,000 or $100,000 as a marker worth celebrating, not with a purchase, just with the acknowledgement that the boulder has moved further than it feels like it has. Dave, if he's honest, never gave himself a single one of these markers. He set the account up and then tried not to think about it, because thinking about it usually made him feel worse. That avoidance is common, and it's understandable, but it's also part of why he's still at the bottom of the hill at 38 instead of the middle of it. If you're in your 30s or early 40s, your one action step is this: increase your contribution by just 1% this month. Your mindset shift is this: you are currently at the bottom of the hill, and that is exactly where you're supposed to. The boulder doesn't care how slow it feels right now. If you're in your 50s, your one action step is to check whether you're using catch-up contributions. The IRS allows people 50 and older to contribute extra to a 401k, and IRA specifically because they know this stage is hard. Use every dollar of that allowance you can. Your mindset shift: you may not have 30 years left to compound, but you likely have 15 to 20, and $200,000 still has real time to work for you. If you're in your 60s or late starter, your one action step is to get an honest picture of what Social Security will actually provide. For most retirees, it replaces roughly 40% of pre-retirement income, not 100%, and build your plan around that reality rather than around hope. Use every dollar of that allowance you can. Your mindset shift: you may not have 30 years left to compound, but you likely have 15 to 20, and $200,000 still has real time to work for you. Your mindset shift is not about catching up to Karen. It's about making the years you do have work as hard as possible, starting today instead of starting someday. Dave and Karen aren't really two different people. They're the same person at two different points on the same hill. Every one of us starts at the bottom, pushing a boulder that doesn't seem to move. The people who end up further down the hill aren't the ones who pushed harder in a single dramatic moment. They're the ones who kept a hand on the boulder during the years when nothing seemed to be happening at all. $200,000 isn't a magic number. It's just the point where your effort and your money's effort finally trade places, where the hill starts helping you instead of the other way around. You don't need to reach it today. You just need to keep pushing until you do. If this helped you see your own number a little differently, you might like the next video, where we break down exactly how much you need at every age to stay on track. No guesswork, just the real math.